I am so excited, Allison. You and I got connected on LinkedIn, and it was like we had that first call, and it was like, yep, we are meant to be friends. We are
Yes.
meant to be doing business life together. And I cannot celebrate more the work that you are doing. So I would love for you to introduce yourself and kind of your founder journey to how you and I met to the overwhelmed and over it audience.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I could not agree more. It just feels like kindred spirits, and I'm thrilled to be here. So thank you. Yeah. So my founder journey was probably not dissimilar to a lot of folks that you and I both know, right? So did the corporate thing, did the technology thing, did the hustle and grind, checking all the boxes. And frankly, I had a really fulfilling and very full career for almost 20 years. I love to work, I love to collaborate, build teams, and it was a lot of fun until it wasn't. And I think really again, not dissimilar to so many people, I think the pandemic and the aftermath of just the sheer exhaustion, the sheer knuckling down, homeschooling kids while trying to work two full-time jobs, my spouse and I, it was tough. It took a toll. And for a long time, I really ignored just how exhausted, just how overwhelmed and completely burnt out I was until my body, chose for me. And as you know, when we connected, I shared that I went through a pretty severe experience last year of ending up in the ER, having to have surgery, and that was really the light bulb moment of the way I'm personally working is just not working. And further, as I was sharing my story and realizing it's not just me, actually, there are so many people that are suffering. There are so many folks that have been conditioned to think you can be anything, you can do it all, you can have it all. The challenge is that, especially as working women, as parents, we just can't do everything by ourselves at the same time, without help and without that support. And so that was kind of my light bulb moment of, wait a minute, I feel really lonely, isolated, and like it's a personal failure. And yet so many people are feeling this way and going through it. So there's something here. So that was the initial moment of clarity. Like we need more conversation about burnout and places to go to have real conversation.
Oh, and I just want to touch on the fact that you said you had a very full career and you loved it. Because there's a lot of times I talk to people who are like, oh, you're like, screw the man and get over corporate and
No.
force everyone to leave their career. And I'm like, no, I loved my career too until it just didn't support the life I needed anymore. And much like you want a safe space for people to go when they're feeling burnout and want resources, it's the same way for me with entrepreneurship. I'm not out here collecting people to be like, are you burnt out? Do you want to become an entrepreneur?
Get off the
But if you
treadmill.
are already having those thoughts and those feelings, there are people out here who have been there, done that, and want to help
Yes.
you cross that bridge too. And so I think that that's a really important piece to call out because, like you said, what works for some people, the way they work, the style they work, their frequency they work is going to be different for each and every one of us. And so burnout's not a one size fits all. Oh, you've checked X amount of boxes and now you're burnt out. It's just your body's going to tell you when it's time and you're going to have those light bulb moments where you're like, wait, I have to actually pay attention to this. I cannot ignore it anymore.
Absolutely. And for me, I'll share very openly that it was a grieving process. Choosing to step back and deciding that, this is not serving me in this moment. And I'm certainly not retiring. There's a world where I'm going to, take a break and then continue working. I just needed to sit with and really unpack for me personally, what that was going to look like. But it was a grieving process. I had to say goodbye to colleagues and the mission and the work that I was so bought in on, and that was a tough thing to grapple with. And so I just want to share that for your listeners that, you know, being burnt out doesn't mean that you lose your ambition. And it doesn't mean that whatever comes next is going to be any less great. It just means that sometimes we need to change course and really consider what's right in this moment for us and shut out the noise, not listen to what society is telling us that next step should be.
Oh, that just gave me chills too, because when I think of anyone I've had a conversation with that says, I've experienced burnt out, I've experienced being overwhelmed, it's all of us who are ambitious and who want to make an impact and who want to work and who want to make a difference. And so I love that you're sharing that you're not feeling this way because something's wrong with you, but you are going to feel like something's wrong with you because you have to grieve.
Yes.
There is a piece of your identity that you're losing.
Yes.
Right, wrong, or indifferent, right? Like that is a part of our identity
Yes.
and it's a huge piece of our life. And anytime that changes, we're going to feel differently about it. I mean, I work with people who have retired and mindset around retirement and how do you make that adjustment.
Yes.
And even those women that I work with will say the same thing. I worked for 50 years. I worked for 60 years. I worked with the same person for 30 years. I saw the same security guard every morning. And now I'm not even allowed to walk in the building. And that's heartbreaking. I don't know what to do with that. And it's the
Yeah.
same thing when we lose a career, whether it's by choice or by not. You still have that, like, who am I and what do I do next?
Absolutely.
So I would love for you to share, Allison, since you talk about burnout and I just love your resources. What are some of the things that if someone is saying what you just said really is resonating with me, what are like light bulb moments you would tell them to look out for so that they know it's time to go get some help, maybe before they hit the ER like you did?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think that, look, there's so many things that could potentially be causing exhaustion, stress, overwhelm. It's really important though to pay attention and to check in with how you're feeling, signs and signals that your body is potentially something's going on. There's a lot of things that could be happening, and burnout looks very different and shows up and is a different experience for everyone. So there's certainly not a one size fits all. Excuse me. I'm a certified health and wellness coach, but I'm certainly not a medical practitioner. So I would say the first thing you have to do is really just trust your instinct. If something feels off,
Mhm.
check in with your doctor, really try to notice after I eat if I'm not feeling well. Is there a consistent pattern? Am I getting enough sleep and yet still waking up and feeling really tired? So, really just start to take notice if and when things are feeling off, and then how consistently that's carrying on, because it's the chronic stress, it's the chronic exhaustion when our bodies really start to feel that impact. And so that's sort of the first message is pay attention. I would say that some signs and symptoms to look out for, again, going to sleep, getting a full night's rest, and every single morning still waking up and feeling very depleted. There's something there that you need to kind of unpack and figure out why. If you're feeling super foggy, your cognitive thinking is impacted. If you feel like you're at your desk and you have 10 things to do and you just can't muster up the motivation to do any of it, it might be because you're just in overdrive. Like your body is in fight or
Mhm.
flight, and that rational cognitive thinking really does get impacted. And so it could be a sign of burnout. Some of the other things that unfortunately people feel include cynicism, right? And so this just feels like I'm at my job, no matter what I do, no matter how I show up, it's not going to make a difference. Like, what's the point? That's tough. And when you start to feel that way, meeting after meeting, day after day, there might be something about that environment that just isn't a right fit, and that's okay. And it also may mean that you've hit that wall. You've hit that moment of I'm so burnt out. I don't think I can push through this. It doesn't mean you have to leave that organization, but it does mean you may need to, find resources, figure out what practices you need to give yourself that space to unwind and not feel like every day, no matter what I do, it's not enough. And then the last thing, and this was true for me, and this was that personal failure I mentioned, it's questioning your own abilities. Part of the
Mm.
research, one of the clear definitions of burnout is when you start to doubt your own ability and your own self-worth. Like, can I even do this job? Because it's a perpetual cycle. You're so tired, you're overwhelmed, you're probably not thinking clearly, maybe you're making some mistakes, and then all of a sudden you start to really question, am I good at this job? Like, what am I doing? How did I get here? And that's a big aha moment that you need to sit up and pay attention to, because you are good at your job. Like, you got there because you're ambitious, you put the work in, and you're working so hard, you are good enough. So if you're feeling that way, that is an absolute resounding red flag. Like, let me take stock and figure out what's going on here.
And I think that applies even to founders, right? Because it's
Yes.
like that is still a job. You may have more control over it, but it's still a job. And if you have built this successful business on your own terms, whatever that means to you, and then you like wake up 6 weeks in a row and you're like, I can't do this anymore. I wasn't cut out for this. How did I even start this business? Like all of those things, just like you said, check in with yourself. And I always say, becoming a founder feels like the MBA to self-awareness. Like
Yes.
it has given me this ability to be like,
Yes.
all right, I'm outside of my bounds here. I've pushed too hard. I need to slow down, whatever it may be. So lean into that because it's there for you for a reason.
Yes. Absolutely. I could not agree more.
All right. Well, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, just kind of how things are going here in the new year for you. And I think the balance, right, of excitement of the new year versus wanting to hit the ground running. What's kind of the overwhelming part of running the business for you at this stage in the game?
Yeah. I would say that, as a founder, as a solo, brand new entrepreneur, it's balancing my time. My mission, the way I want to show up and help people is very much how I also want to run Unburnt. I want to feel balanced. I want to be energized every day. And yet I do still feel like there are 10,000 things I could possibly be doing. And so it's very much a new motion for me. It's different than working in corporate where you are in charge of every single minute, every decision. And so for me right now, the balance is really figuring out, yeah, there's a lot of things that I want to get to and I'm excited about, but is that going to move the needle right now? And I just have to get really focused on some initial things that I'm working on, because if I try to distract myself and do too much, I personally am going to burn myself out. And wouldn't that be the irony of it all? So it's really right now for me, it's about time management and just being really focused.
Oh, I feel that deeply. Focus is my word for 2025
Oh, I love
because
that.
I did that. Be everywhere, do all the things, show up in all the places for far too many years of my founder journey. So we're not doing that anymore.
I love it. Great.
Well, Allison, I'm so glad we got to do this. And I want to wrap up as I always do. What do you or Unburnt need the most support with right now? And maybe our audience can help fill that.
Yeah, thank you so much for that opportunity. So, in the spirit of, starting off and kind of prioritizing some stuff, I just launched an Instagram. So, if anyone wants to check us out there, that would be a great way to, first and foremost, get access to a lot of the free resources. So, there's a lot of tips, ways to engage. So, check us out on Instagram. And then, if you're interested, if this sounds like something that speaks to you and you want to join the community and get more ingrained in how we're having conversations, providing resources, advice, support. There is a community that you can join on getunburnt.com. And yeah, I would love for you to check it out.
Awesome. Well, we will make sure we have all your links in the show notes as well, so that way everyone can connect with you there.
Thank you.
And I know I'll see you around the webs, and we'll keep in touch.
Yes, that sounds great. Thank you so much.